Okay, so this time, we're diving into the world of handcrafted leather goods.
We've gotten some really interesting questions from listeners, particularly about what it takes to be a leather goods artisanal worker.
Yeah.
And RoleCatcher.com, right? You found some good stuff there.
RoleCatcher.com has been a really great resource for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a fascination with this idea of, you know, working with your hands, creating something beautiful, something lasting.
It's funny because when I think about leather goods, I think like really high-end luxury, right?
Yeah.
Like a beautiful Italian leather bag or a pair of boots that are going to last you a lifetime.
Right. And it's interesting you say that because I think there's this perception that it's a dying art form,
Right.
but it's really not.
Really?
It's actually evolving.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
so you have the classic items, right? You have your saddles, your briefcases, but then you have all this demand for like sustainable and eco-friendly options.
Mm.
So think plant-based leathers, things made from like pineapple fibers or even mushrooms.
Mushrooms?
Yeah, they can make leather out of mushroom fibers now.
That's wild. I mean, I've heard of like vegan leather, but I always thought it was just like plastic.
Some of it is, but some of it is actually getting incredibly sophisticated with these natural materials.
No, that's amazing. Okay, so for someone who's totally clueless about this world, like me, what does a leather goods artisanal worker actually do? I mean, is it just about stitching together pieces of leather? Because that sounds kind of
Well,
simplistic.
way more involved than that. You're
Oh,
not just, like you said, stitching pieces together.
right.
You're crafting something from start to finish.
Okay.
And that means you're also repairing existing goods.
Oh, right. Of course. Like if you have a leather bag that needs to be resold or something.
Exactly. And you're working with a lot of different types of leather, too.
What? I mean, I only know like cowhide.
So you have cowhide, which is super durable,
Hmm.
right? Then you've got pigskin, which is more breathable, so it's often used for things like gloves.
Ah, that makes sense.
And then you have sheepskin, which is incredibly soft and supple. Each leather has its own, like, personality almost,
Yeah.
and you have to know how to work with each one.
That's really interesting. It makes you appreciate the craft so much more. It's like, I don't know, woodworking or something.
It is. It's very similar to woodworking.
Yeah.
You need that same level of precision.
Yeah, that attention to detail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're using your hands to shape this material. You're
Yeah.
understanding how it responds to each cut, each stitch.
So it's like a combination of technical skill and artistry.
Exactly. You're not just a technician. You're an artist who's using their hands to bring both functionality and beauty to life.
Okay, so now I'm picturing a leather worker, and they're in this like really cool sun-drenched workshop, maybe with a vintage sewing machine in the corner, rolls of beautiful leather stacked on shelves.
Right, the classic image.
Exactly. But is that actually what the work environment is like? I mean, the stuff you found mentioned other settings too, right?
Yeah, it's not always that romanticized.
Right.
Some leather workers do have those independent workshops.
But others might work in larger factories, especially if they're part of a team producing goods on a bigger scale.
Right, right. So it's not always like a one-person operation.
And then there's also the whole work from home trend.
Oh, yeah, of course. With the internet and everything, you can pretty much do anything from home now.
Exactly. So you might have leather workers who set up shop in a spare room or a garage.
So it seems like there's a lot of flexibility in terms of where you work.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the things that's so appealing about this field.
I can see that. But I'm guessing each setting comes with its own pros and cons, like deciding whether you want to be a solo artist or part of a collaborative team.
That's a big one.
Yeah. So what do you think are some of the biggest differences between those settings?
Well, for some people, it's all about that independence.
Right. Being your own boss?
Exactly. Setting your own hours, having complete creative control,
I can see that being really appealing.
and enjoying the solitude and the focus that comes with working alone.
Right, because you're not being interrupted by coworkers or anything like that.
Exactly. But then there are others who really thrive in a more collaborative environment.
Yeah, where you can bounce ideas off of other people, get feedback.
Exactly. And learn from each other's experiences.
It's like that old saying, two heads are better than one.
Exactly. Especially when you're tackling a complex design challenge or experimenting with a new technique.
That makes sense. So it's really about finding the right fit for your personality and your work style.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are the practical considerations, too.
Like what?
Well, one thing that RoleCatcher really emphasizes is the importance of safety.
Oh, right. Because you're working with sharp tools and stuff, right?
Exactly. You've got awls, knives, and then potentially chemicals, too, depending on what kind of treating and dyeing you're doing.
So it's not just about being creative.
Yeah.
You have to be safety conscious as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's especially important to keep in mind if you are considering working from home.
because you might not have the same safety protocols in place as you would in a more professional setting.
Exactly. So it's important to do your research and make sure you're setting up a safe and healthy work environment.
That's a really good point. Okay, so speaking of practical matters, let's talk about the career path itself.
Because one of the first things anyone wants to know when they're considering a career is, can I actually make a living doing this?
Of course.
And I have to admit, when I saw that the projected job growth for leather goods artisanal workers is only 1%, I was a little concerned.
I can understand that.
Because that doesn't sound very promising.
Right, but I think it's important to look at the bigger picture here.
Okay, so what's the bigger picture?
The traditional path of working for a large leather goods manufacturer, that might not offer the same job security it once did.
Right, because those jobs are probably being automated.
Exactly. And that 1% gross, that kind of reflects that reality.
Okay.
But there's a whole other side to the industry that's actually thriving.
Really? What's that? So it's less about mass production and more about, like, tapping into this niche market for custom-made items.
Exactly. It's about becoming not just a leather worker, but a craftsperson entrepreneur.
Okay.
Or creating something with a story behind it, something that connects with people on a deeper level.
Right, because it's unique. It's one of a kind.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher actually highlights how online platforms have been a game changer for this.
Oh, interesting. So you can, like, sell your stuff online.
Yeah, you can reach a global audience,
Yeah.
build your own brand without having to go through traditional retail channels.
That's amazing. So it's like you're setting up shop in this virtual marketplace.
Exactly.
That's so cool. And speaking of showcasing your work, the sources also talked a lot about building a portfolio.
Now, I get that for visual artists, a portfolio is a given, but how does that translate to leatherwork?
It's just as important for leather workers. Absolutely. It's how you demonstrate your skills, your style, your creativity.
So it's like a curated collection of your best pieces, right?
Exactly. It's where potential clients can really see what you're capable of.
I guess it's like saying, this is what I can do. If you can dream it, I can probably make it.
Exactly.
Okay, so for someone listening who's like totally inspired now and wants to pursue this, what would you say is the most crucial step in going from interested to artisan?
Well, RoleCatcher was very clear on this point. Gaining hands-on experience is paramount.
Okay, so how do you do that? Like, did you just buy some leather and start cutting?
You could, but the most time-tested path is definitely through an apprenticeship.
So finding a mentor, someone who's already mastered the craft,
Exactly.
and learning the ropes firsthand.
Precisely. Now, it might take some time to find the right apprenticeship.
And you might not be crafting those bespoke pieces right away.
Right, you're probably starting with more basic tasks.
Exactly. Remember that section on entry-level responsibilities?
Yeah.
It emphasizes assisting experienced artisans learning by doing.
So it's like laying the foundation for a well-built house.
Exactly. You can't rush the process.
And speaking of time, it seems like continuous learning is huge in this field.
RoleCatcher mentioned workshops, courses, staying updated on trends. It's not just a learn it once and you're good kind of thing.
Definitely not. This industry is always evolving.
Right, with new techniques, new tools, even new materials like those eco-friendly options we talked about.
Exactly. A successful leather worker is always learning, always growing.
And I'm guessing those online communities we mentioned play a big role in that.
Huge. It's like having access to this global network of mentors and peers.
Right, you can share ideas, troubleshoot problems, stay up to date on the latest trends.
Exactly. It's an incredible resource for anyone interested in leatherwork.
Okay, so we've talked about the skills, the work environment, the business side of things.
Well, what about the less tangible rewards? The things that might not be in a job description, but that make this career path so fulfilling?
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher touched on this briefly, but the satisfaction of bringing a customer's vision to life, that's huge.
Right, because you're taking someone's idea, their dream, and turning it into something real.
And there's this amazing collaborative process that happens.
Where you're working with the client every step of the way to make sure their vision is realized.
That's really special. It's like you're creating more than just the leather good.
Yeah.
You're creating an experience.
Exactly. And then beyond custom work, there's the creative freedom that comes with designing your own pieces.
Right. You're not just following someone else's instructions.
Exactly. You can let your own personal style shine through, experiment with different techniques and materials.
It's like you're an artist using leather as your canvas.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the historical significance of it all.
Oh, right. Because leatherworking has been around for centuries.
Millennia, even.
Wow. So you're part of this long lineage of craftspeople. It's like you're holding a piece of history in your hands, but you're also shaping its future.
It's a really powerful feeling.
It is. And I think that's what's so captivating about this whole deep dive.
It's not just about should you become a leather goods artisanal worker. It's about appreciating the artistry and skill that goes into every handmade leather good.
Right. Even if you're never going to make one yourself.
Exactly. So as we wrap up here,
I think it's important to reiterate that there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this career question.
definitely not.
Like any career path, it's about finding the right fit for you.
Your passions, your goals, your lifestyle.
Exactly.
But if you're listening to this and you're feeling that spark,
That pull towards the world of leather,
yeah,
what would you say to encourage someone to, like, take that first step?
I would say just dive in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a workshop. Try a beginner project. Reach out to a local leather worker. Ask some questions.
That's great advice. Because you never know, you could discover a passion you never knew you had.
Exactly. And maybe someday you'll be the one with the sun-drenched workshop.
With the smell of leather in the air.
And a line of customers eager to...
That's a great image to end on. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of leatherwork. It's not just about the finished product. It's about the journey, the dedication, the artistry. Until next time, happy exploring.